Hey guys, tonight we journey back thousands of years to the banks of the Nile, to a civilization known for pyramids, pharaohs, and gods that watched your every move. But behind thegoled masks and grand temples lies a much harsher reality. Today we're asking, what would happen if you lived just one day in ancient Egypt? Because, let me tell you, the sun isn't the only thing that will roast you alive. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what Edo here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. I woke to the sound of howling wind and the sting of sand tearing at my skin. The air was a choking shroud of dust, so thick I could barely see my own hands clawing at the void before me. Panic seized my chest as I stumbled blindly, the ground shifting beneath my feet, each step a battle against a storm that roared like a vengeful god. Where was I? How had I gotten here? The sand lashed my face like a whip, drawing blood, and the wind screamed in my ears, drowning out my own ragged gasps. I was in the heart of chaos, a prisoner of nature's fury, and I had no idea if I'd live to see the next hour. Then, through the suffocating haze, a shadow loomed, a frail reed hut, its walls trembling as if it might collapse at any moment. I lunged toward it, collapsing through the doorway just as the storm's claws seemed to tighten around me. Inside, the air was still, but it pressed down with a heat so heavy I could feel it in my bones. I lay there, sprawled on the dirt floor, my body coated in a gritty film of sand and sweat. My breath came in shallow bursts, and as the storm's roar dulled to a mournful wail outside, I took stock of my refuge: a straw mat, a few clay pots, a folded linen sheet, brittle with age. The air smelled of earth and something older, something ancient. I dragged myself to the threshold and peered out. The storm was dying, unveiling a world that stole the air from my lungs. In the distance, pyramids rose like jagged teeth against a sky ablaze with the sun's unyielding fire. The Nile glittered like a vein of molten gold, cutting through a land of sand and stone. This was no hallucination. I was in ancient Egypt, thrust back to 2500 BCE, a stranger in a time where survival was a daily wager against a merciless world. The realization crashed over me, cold and sharp, leaving me trembling despite the heat. I was alone, unarmed, and utterly unprepared. The sun climbed higher, its rays a hammer against my skull. My modern comforts were gone, stripped away, replaced by a thin linen tunic that clung to my skin like a second, useless layer. No shoes, no hat, no water bottle to fend off the dehydration already clawing at my throat. The temperature soared past 90 degrees Fahrenheit, and it wasn't even noon. Sand was everywhere under my nails, in my mouth, coating my eyelashes. I needed water, but the only source was the Nile, a shimmering promise just beyond the hut. I staggered toward it, each step a negotiation with the scorching earth. The river's edge assaulted my senses. The smell hit first, a pungent stew of fish, rot, and swamp gas. Flies swarmed in clouds, their buzz a relentless drone, and beneath the water's surface, Dark shapes glided with predatory grace, crocodiles. This was no serene lifeline. It was a gamble with death. I waded in, the coolness, a fleeting mercy against my burning skin. Soap was a fantasy, yet unborn, so I scrubbed with sand, its roughness scouring me raw. I beat my tunic against a rock, watching the murky water swirl with dirt, and prayed nothing snapped at my hands. The Nile was Egypt's beating heart, revered and feared, a god in liquid form that could nurture or destroy with equal ease. Back at the hut, I found a meager meal, a dense loaf of bread, and a jar of cloudy beer. The bread was a gritty slab, baked with the desert itself, each bite a crunch of sand between my teeth. The beer was thick, more stew than drink, but it was safer than the river's brew of parasites. I forced it down, my stomach churning, knowing this was no luxury, was fuel for a body already pushed to its edge. Hunger gnawed, but exhaustion loomed larger. I had no time to rest. In ancient Egypt, idleness was a privilege I didn't possess. Work came swiftly, as inevitable as the sun's ascent. A wooden plow was thrust into my hands, and I was herded to a field of Nile mud, black and sticky underfoot. An overseer loomed, his voice a thunderclap of commands in a tongue I strained to decipher. I labored under the sun's glare, yanking weeds and planting barley, my back bending until it screamed, my hands blistering against the rough wood. The heat was a living thing, wrapping around me, slowing every move to a sluggish crawl. Sweat stung my eyes, but there was no pause, no mercy, only the rhythm of survival, beaten into the earth with every aching step. Yet, amidst the toil, a shift began. The villagers gathered, their voices rising in song, their hands weaving flowers into garlands along the riverbank. A festival for Hapi, the Nile's god, was unfolding, a burst of color and sound against the monotony of labor. They offered bread and beer, their faces alight with a hope I couldn't yet grasp. I joined them, drawn by the melody, my voice faltering but finding its place among theirs. For a moment, the weight lifted. The Nile wasn't just a threat, was their life, their faith, their bond. I felt it too, a thread of belonging woven through the hardship, fragile but real. Later, I sat by the river's edge, my hands learning the slow dance of weaving linen from flax. The fibers were stubborn, slipping through my clumsy fingers, but there was a quiet beauty in the task. As dusk painted the sky in hues of amber and indigo, I lay back, the stars emerging like lanterns above the pyramid's silhouette. The Egyptians had aligned those stones with the heavens, a testament to a brilliance I could scarcely fathom. How did they endure this brutal existence, yet craft wonders that defied time? It was their spirit, I realized, their unyielding will, to find meaning in the chaos that night. As the desert cooled and the Nile's whispers filled the silence, I reflected on what I'd seen. Surviving here wasn't just about outlasting the heat or the hunger. It was about resilience, about forging purpose from pain. I didn't know if I'd make it another day, but I felt a flicker of their strength in me, a spark kindled by their songs, their labor, their gods. They had built a world that would echo through millennia, and in their shadow I was learning to stand. If this plunge into the sands of ancient Egypt has gripped your imagination, please consider subscribing to support more tales that unearth the raw, beating heart of history. Your encouragement keeps these stories alive. the days blurred into a rhythm of struggle and revelation. Each morning I rose with the sun, my body aching but adapting. I bathed in the Nile's murky embrace, ate the gritty bread, and toiled in the fields. The overseer's shouts, a constant drumbeat, but the festivals returned, each one a lifeline of joy offerings to Osiris, dances for Hathor, prayers for the harvest. I wove linen with growing skill, my hands finding solace in the craft, and watched the stars shift above the pyramids, their patterns a map of eternity. The Egyptians thrived, not despite their world, but within it, their lives a tapestry of sweat and spirit. I lasted longer than I'd dreamed, and in their enduring legacy, I found a mirror to my own fragile courage. I woke to the sound of distant drums, their rhythm pulsing through the thick, humid air like a heartbeat. The scent of copal incense mingled with the earthy aroma of the jungle, and as I opened my eyes, I found myself lying on a woven mat in a small adobe hut. The walls were adorned with faded mural serpents coiled around stars, their scales shimmering in the dim light. Through the open doorway, I glimpsed a bustling plaza, alive with movement, and beyond it, a towering pyramid crowned with stone serpent heads, their eyes gleaming as if alive. I had arrived in Chichen Itza, in the heart of a civilization as mysterious as it was magnificent, circa 200 CE. Stepping outside, I was struck by the city's vibrant pulse. Merchants hawked their wares, jade obsidian, feathers dyed in colors so bright they seemed to glow. Children darted through the crowd, their laughter mingling with the chants of priests echoing from the temples. The air was thick, almost suffocating, yet it carried a strange energy, as if the very stones hummed with ancient power. Above it all loomed the temple of the feathered serpent, its terraced steps rising with geometric precision, each edge sharp as a blade. Serpents carved from limestone jutted from its facade, their fanged mouths open in eternal warning. The temple was both beautiful and terrifying, a monument to a god who demanded reverence and fear in equal measure. I approached slowly, each step heavier than the last, as if the weight of its history pressed against my chest. How could something so awe-inspiring also feel so oppressive? A figure emerged from the crowd, his presence commanding despite his unassuming stature. He was lean, his bare chest marked with faint scars, a headdress of green feathers framing his angular face. His eyes, dark and piercing, studied me with a mix of curiosity and wariness. "You are not from here," he said, his voice steady. In a language I somehow understood. "I am Itzkatile. What brings you to the city of the serpent?" I introduced myself as a traveler from a distant land, my words faltering under his gaze. He nodded, a faint smile breaking through his guarded expression. "Then you must see what we see," he said. "Walk with me." Grateful for a guide in this strange world, I followed him through the bustling streets, the temple's shadow stretching behind us like a silent guardian. Its Kodal spoke as we moved, his words weaving a tapestry of myth and reality. The feathered serpent, Kukulkan, was no mere deity, but a force of duality, creator and destroyer, bringer of life and harbinger of death. "He is the wind that carries the rain," Itzkotl said, gesturing to the sky, "and the jaws that demand blood to keep the cosmos in balance." He told me of the sacrifices, how the chosen were led to the temple's summit and offered to the heavens. "There lives a sacred gift to ensure the sun would rise again. His tone held pride, but beneath it I caught a flicker of sorrow, as if the weight of those offerings pressed upon him too. I listened, my stomach tightening. The idea of human blood staining that pristine stone chilled me, yet its scrotal spoke of it as a necessity, a duty woven into the fabric of their existence. How could a people so brilliant, so attuned to the stars, embrace such brutality? The question burned in my throat, but I swallowed it, held back by the reverence in his voice. We reached the edge of the city, where a massive stone court stretched before us, its high walls carved with scenes of warriors and serpents locked in eternal struggle. The sacred ball court, its Codal explained, was more than a place of sport. It was a battlefield of the cosmos, where players reenacted the eternal dance of creation and chaos. The game was played with a heavy rubber ball, struck only with hips, knees, and elbows, its rules as unforgiving as the gods themselves. "Would you join us?" he asked, his eyes glinting with challenge. My pulse quickened. I'd heard whispers of the ball game's stakes, how a loss could mean death, how victory was a divine blessing. Fear clawed at me, but so did a strange compulsion. To refuse was to remain an outsider, untouched by the truths of this place. "Yes," I said, my voice trembling but firm. The game began with a roar from the gathered crowd, their voices crashing over me like a wave. I stood among the players, my body tense, the air thick with dust and anticipation. Its Codal took his place beside me, his movements fluid and assured, a warrior born to this ritual. The ball thudded against the ground, its weight a living thing, and I threw myself into the fray. My hips ached with each strike, my breath came in ragged gasps, but there was no time to falter. The ball flew between us, a blur of motion, the walls amplifying the shouts of the spectators. Sweat stung my eyes as I dodged and lunged, my fear giving way to a wild, desperate energy. Its Codal scored, his strike sending the ball through a stone ring high on the wall, and the crowd erupted. When it ended, I collapsed to my knees, my chest heaving, every muscle screaming. Its Codal pulled me to my feet, his grip strong. "You fought well for a stranger," he said, his grin wide and genuine. "The gods have seen you." I managed a weak smile, exhilaration coursing through me despite the pain. I had survived more than that. I had touched something sacred. As dusk fell, the city transformed. Torches flickered to life, casting golden light across the plazas, and the air grew heavy with the scent of burning resin. Its Codal led me back to the temple, where a crowd had gathered beneath its towering steps. Priests in feathered cloaks stood at the summit, their chants rising like smoke into the darkening sky. Drums pulsed, a heartbeat that seemed to sync with my own, and above us, Venus blazed bright, a beacon of celestial power. Its Codal handed me a bowl of pigment shreds, blues and yellows ground from earth and stone, and a brush made of reeds. "Paint," he said simply. "Honor Kukulkan with your hands." I stared at the blank wall before me, an expanse of smooth limestone, and felt the weight of the moment settle over me. This was no idle task. It was an offering, a bridge between my world and theirs. I dipped the brush and began, my strokes tentative. At first, then bolder. I painted the feathered serpent as I saw it, in my mind its coils winding through clouds, its feathers shimmering with life, its eyes fierce yet wise. The drums thundered on, the priests' voices weaving through the night, and I lost myself in the act. The colors bled into one another, vibrant against the stone, and with each line I felt a connection deepen, not just to Kukulkan, but to the people who lived and died in its shadow. Fear lingered, a thread of unease at the blood that had soaked this place, but it was tempered by awe. The temple was more than stone. It was a mirror of their souls, reflecting a belief so profound it defied my understanding. When I stepped back, my hands stained and trembling, Itzcoatl placed a hand on my shoulder. "You have captured it," he said, his voice soft with approval. "The essence of the serpent lives in your work." The ceremony stretched into the night, a tapestry of sound and light that left me breathless. As it ended, I stood at the temple's base, gazing up at the serpents that seemed to shift in the torchlight. The city slept around me, its energy quieted, but the weight of what I'd seen lingered. Itzcoatl had shown me a world where beauty and terror were inseparable, where every act, from the ball game's fury to the mural's creation, was a plea for harmony with the cosmos. I thought of Egypt, of the Nile's steady flow and the pyramids, silent endurance, and saw now how different these places were, yet how alike in their hunger for meaning. Chichen Itza had tested me, stripped away my certainties, and left me with a reverence I hadn't known I could feel. The temple of the feathered serpent was not just a monument, it was a testament to a people who dared to reach for the divine, no matter the cost. Days later, as I prepared to leave how or why, I couldn't say I carried that truth with me. Itzcoatl's stories, the ball game's scars, the mural's colors, they were etched into me, a map of a civilization I would never fully grasp but could never forget. I had come as a stranger, fearful and unsure, but I left changed, my heart heavier with the weight of their faith, and my mind alight with the brilliance of their vision. The feathered serpent watched me go, its stone eyes eternal, and I wondered what other worlds awaited, what other lessons lay hidden in the shadows of time. The journey through Chichen Itza had been more than a passage through a city. It was a descent into the depths of human longing, a confrontation with the raw, unfiltered pulse of existence. The temple stood as a sentinel, its presence a constant reminder of the stakes at play, life, death, and the fragile thread that bound them. Itzcoatl had been my guide, but also my mirror, reflecting a strength and certainty I envied yet feared to claim. His world was one of absolutes, where doubt was a luxury they could not afford, and I, a wanderer adrift in time, felt the pull of that clarity like a tide. The sacrifices haunted me still, their echoes reverberating in the quiet moments. When I closed my eyes, I saw the chosen ones climbing those steep steps, their faces calm with purpose, their bodies adorned with feathers and paint, as if they were already part of the divine. Did they feel fear or only pride? Did they see their deaths as an end or a beginning? Itzcoatl had spoken of balance, of the sun's hunger and the earth's need, but I wondered if he, too, lay awake some nights, wrestling with the cost. His sorrow, fleeting as it was, hinted at a man who bore the burden of understanding, a man who knew the price of their survival and paid it willingly. The ball game lingered in my bones, a memory of motion and madness that had pushed me beyond myself. I could still feel the sting of the ball against my skin, the roar of the crowd in my ears, The moment when fear dissolved into something fiercer, something alive. Itzcoatl had called it a dance, and perhaps it was a choreography of chaos that mirrored the universe they sought to uphold. I had played not just for survival, but for a glimpse into their souls, and what I found there was both alien and familiar, yearning for triumph over the void, a defiance of the darkness that waited beyond the stars. Painting the serpent had been my offering, a fragile thread of connection, spun from color and intent. As I worked, the world had fallen away, leaving only the rhythm of the drums and the vision in my mind. The act was a surrender, a letting go of the questions that gnawed at me. Why the blood? Why the pain? An acceptance of their truth, if only for a moment. The mural was my voice in their chorus, a stranger's hymn to a god I could not name but could feel, its presence coiling through me like the wind itself. Itzcoatl's approval had been a gift, a recognition that I had touched the edge of their sacred, even if I could never fully cross into it. Standing before the temple that final night, I felt the weight of its gaze. The serpent's eyes boring into me as if they could see through flesh to the trembling core within. The air was cool now, the jungle's chorus softened, and the city seemed to hold its breath. I thought of the lives that had built this place, the hands that had carved its stones, the hearts that had bled to keep it standing. They were gone, their voices silenced by time, yet here they remained, woven into the fabric of the earth itself. I envied their certainty, their unity with the divine, even as I recoiled from its price. Egypt had taught me of endurance, of a quiet strength that weathered the ages. But Chichen Itza demanded something more, of fierce, unflinching embrace of the now, a willingness to burn bright and brief for the sake of the whole. When I turned to leave, Itzcoatl stood at the edge of the plaza, his silhouette framed by the fading torchlight. He raised a hand, a silent farewell, and I returned the gesture. The space between us, vast yet bridged by what we had shared. I walked into the jungle, the temple's shadow receding behind me, but its presence lingered, a weight I carried in my chest. The drums faded, the air grew still, and I was alone again, a traveler unmoored, chasing the echoes of worlds I could never fully claim. Yet Chitza had marked me, its lessons a fire that burned beneath my skin, urging me onward to whatever lay beyond. The temple of the feathered serpent was a paradox, a riddle carved in stone and blood, and I was no closer to solving it than when I had arrived. But perhaps that was its gift, not answers, but questions that sharpened the edges of my soul. Itzcoatl had shown me a people who lived at the precipice, their every breath a defiance of oblivion, their every act a thread in a tapestry vast beyond imagining. I left with no farewell, no promise of return, only the certainty that I would carry them with me, always their beauty, their terror, their unyielding reach for the stars. The air was thick with the scent of rain and earth, a heavy stillness, pressing down as if the world itself held its breath. I lay on a bed of soft grass, my eyes tracing the canopy of stars above, their light faint against the encroaching dawn. Somewhere in the distance, a sound began, a low, rhythmic thrum, like the heartbeat of the land. It grew louder, insistent, pulling me from the haze of sleep. I sat up, disoriented, my surroundings unfamiliar, yet strangely alive. The drumming echoed through the trees, a call that stirred something primal within me, urging me to follow. I rose and stepped into the jungle, the path illuminated by the first rays of sunlight filtering through the leaves. The drums grew clearer, their cadence, a language I didn't know but felt in my bones. I emerged into a clearing where a village sprawled, its thatched huts encircling a wide plaza. At its center, a circle of drummers sat, their hands moving in perfect synchrony, the drums between their knees, speaking a story older than words. The villagers gathered around them, some swaying, others clapping, their faces alight with joy. I stood at the edge, an outsider, drawn into a world where rhythm was the thread that bound them together. A woman with a warm smile and eyes like polished onyx approached me. "Welcome, traveler," she said, her voice melodic. "I am Naya. You've come at a good time. The drums call us to celebrate the harvest." She gestured to the circle, where the drummers' hands danced across the taut skins, each strike a note in a symphony of life. I introduced myself, my words stumbling over the awe that gripped me. Nia laughed softly. "Come," she said, "let the drums speak to you." I followed her to the circle, where an elder drummer, his hair silvered with age, nodded in welcome. His hands were calloused, his fingers moving with a grace that belied his years. "This is Kofi," Nia said. "He is our master drummer, keeper of the rhythms that guide us." Kofi's eyes met mine, and in them I saw a depth of knowledge that spanned generations. "The drum is more than sound," he said, his voice a low rumble. "It is the voice of the ancestors, the pulse of the earth, the song of the spirit." He handed me a small drum, its wooden frame warm to the touch. "Feel it," he urged. "Let it teach you." I hesitated, my hands hovering over the drumhead. The rhythm around me was intricate, a tapestry of beats that seemed impossible to untangle. But Kofi's gaze was steady, encouraging. I struck the drum, a tentative tap that barely whispered against the chorus. Nia clapped in time, her smile wide. "Again," she said. I struck harder, the sound resonating through my palms. Slowly, I found a simple pattern, my hands mimicking the basic pulse that underpinned the music. The villagers cheered, their voices lifting me. And for a moment, I was part of something larger, community bound by the shared language of rhythm. As the day wore on, I learned more about the drum's significance. Nia explained that in their culture, drums were not mere instruments, but vessels of power. The gem, carved from sacred wood and crowned with goatskin, was believed to hold the spirits of the tree, the animal, and the craftsman who shaped it. "When we play," she said, "we speak to the gods, to the ancestors, to each other." The talking drums, with their ability to mimic the tonal language, carried messages across vast distances, weaving the villages into a network of sound. I listened, rapt, as Kofi demonstrated, his hands coaxing words from the drum that echoed. Through the air like spoken truth, the sun dipped low, casting the plaza in a golden glow, and the drumming shifted, growing slower, deeper. Nia led me to a quiet corner, where a group of elders sat, their faces etched with the lines of time. "The drums tell our stories," one said, her voice a whisper. "They carry our joys, our sorrows, our hopes." She spoke of how the rhythms marked every stage of life, from birth to death, from planting to harvest. I thought of Egypt, of the Nile's steady flow and the songs sung to honor its bounty, and saw now how rhythm was a universal thread stitching humanity to the earth and to each other. That night, the village gathered for a ceremony beneath the stars. The drums thundered, their voices rising to the heavens, and dancers moved in graceful arcs, their bodies painting stories in the firelight. I watched, mesmerized, until Naya pulled me into the circle. "Dance," she urged, her eyes alight. I stumbled at first, my movements awkward, but the drums guided me, their pulse syncing with my heartbeat. I let go, surrendering to the rhythm, and for a timeless moment, I was free and tethered from thought, from fear, from the weight of being a stranger. The villagers cheered, their laughter a balm, and I felt a connection that transcended words, a belonging that needed no explanation. When the ceremony ended, I sat with Kofi by the dying embers, the drums silent, but their echo lingering in the air. "You felt it," he said, not a question, but a statement. I nodded, my throat tight. "The drum is a bridge," he continued, "between the seen and the unseen, between the individual and the whole." He placed a hand on my shoulder, his touch warm and steady. "Wherever you go, carry this with youth and knowledge. That rhythm is the language of the soul, and it speaks in every land, in every heart." The next morning, I left the village, the drums' farewell, a soft murmur in the distance. But their lesson stayed with me, a steady beat beneath my steps. I traveled onward, the world shifting around me, until I found myself in the vast plains of North America, where the horizon stretched unbroken and the sky was a canvas of endless blue. Here, among the indigenous tribes, the drum was once again the heartbeat of the people. I arrived at a powwow, a gathering of nations, where the air thrummed with the sound of the great drum. It was a massive instrument, its frame encircled by drummers who struck it in unison, their voices raised in song. The powwow drum was more than music. It was a sacred vessel, a conduit to the spirits. An elder named Wanbli, his face weathered like the land itself, welcomed me. "The drum is our mother's heartbeat," he said, his voice carrying the weight of tradition. "It reminds us of where we come from and where we are going." I sat among the spectators, watching as dancers in regalia of feathers and beads moved in intricate patterns, their steps a prayer, their movements a story. The drum's rhythm was steady, unyielding, a pulse that seemed to anchor the world. Wanbli spoke of how the drum connected them to their ancestors, to the animals, to the earth itself. "When we drum," he said, "we are not alone. We are part of everything." I thought of Kofi's words, of the bridge between the seen and the unseen, and felt the truth of it here, in this place where the past and present danced together. Later, I was invited to join the drummers, my hands tentative on the great drum's surface. The wood was smooth, worn by countless hands, and as I struck it, the sound reverberated through me, deep and resonant. The other drummers smiled, their encouragement wordless but clear. I found the rhythm, my heartbeat aligning with the drum's voice, and for a moment I was part of the circle, part of the song that had been sung for generations. It was a humbling experience, a reminder that rhythm was not just sound, but a way of being, a way of connecting to something greater than oneself. From the plains, I journeyed to the modern world, to the streets of New Orleans, where the legacy of drums lived on in jazz and blues. The city pulsed with music, its rhythms a fusion of cultures and histories. I wandered into a park where a drum circle had formed. People of all ages and backgrounds gathered around a cluster of gems, and bongos. A young man with dreadlocks and a wide grin handed me a drum. "Join us," he said. "Everyone's welcome here." I sat among them, the drum between my knees, and began to play. The rhythm was loose, improvisational, a conversation in beats. Around me, others added their voices, their hands coaxing out patterns that wove together into a tapestry of sound. It was chaotic, yet harmonious, a reflection of the city itself. I thought of the village in Africa, of the pow-wow in the plains, and saw how the drum had traveled through time and space, adapting yet remaining true to its essence. Here, in this urban jungle, it was still a bridge, connecting strangers through the simple act of making music together. As the sun set, casting the park in hues of orange and pink, the drumming reached a crescendo, a wild, joyous cacophony that seemed to lift the very air. I closed my eyes, letting the rhythm wash over me, feeling the vibrations in my chest, in my soul. In that moment, I understood what Kofi and Wanbli had tried to teach me, that the drum was a universal language, a primal force that spoke to the core of what it meant to be human. It was joy and sorrow, life and death, chaos and order, all bound together in a single, unending pulse. When the drumming finally stilled, I sat in the quiet, the echo of the beats lingering in my ears. The young man with the dreadlocks smiled at me. "You felt it, didn't you?" he said, unable to find words. He laughed, a sound as warm as the drum's voice. "That's the magic of it. No matter where you're from, the drum brings you home." I left New Orleans with that truth etched into me, a rhythm that would guide my steps wherever I went. The drums had shown me that beneath the surface of our differences, we all shared the same heartbeat, the same need to connect, to create, to belong. From the jungles of Africa to the plains of America to the streets of a modern city, the drum was a constant, a reminder that we were never truly alone. As I journeyed onward, the sound of drums faded into memory, but their lesson remained steady, unyielding pulse that told me I was part of something vast and beautiful, something that stretched across time and space, binding us all in its embrace. And in that knowledge, I found a peace I had never known, a certainty that wherever I went, the rhythm would always lead me home. The first time I saw Manhattan's skyline, I was a child clinging to my father's hand, my neck craned back so far it ached. We stood on the deck of the Staten Island ferry, the water lapping gently beneath us, and there it was, jagged silhouette against the bruised purple of dusk, a city that seemed to rise from the sea itself, the Empire State Building stabbed, the sky with its spire a beacon of unwavering ambition, while the Chrysler Building's Art Deco crown shimmered like a crown jewel caught in the last light. I didn't know then what those buildings meant, the stories they held, or the resilience they embodied. I only knew they were beautiful, and they made my small world feel infinite. Years later, I returned to that skyline as an adult, no longer a wide-eyed visitor, but a seeker of its soul. The city had changed, and so had I. The Twin Towers, once twin sentinels of commerce and power, were gone, replaced by the gleaming spike of One World Trade Center, a monument to both loss and defiance. I walked the streets of Lower Manhattan, the air thick with the hum of life, and felt the weight of history beneath my feet. This was not just a city of steel and glass, but a living tapestry woven with threads of triumph and tragedy, each building a testament to the human spirit's refusal to break the Empire State. Building stood as the elder statesman of the skyline, its limestone and granite facade a stoic witness to nearly a century of New York's evolution. I climbed to its observation deck one crisp autumn evening, the wind tugging at my coat as I gazed out over the sprawl of lights below. Built in the depths of the Great Depression, it was a marvel born of desperation and dreams of 102-story. Dare to the world that America could rise even when it seemed destined to fall. I thought of the workers who had dangled from cables hundreds of feet above the streets, their hands shaping a future they could only imagine. Their courage was etched into every rivet. The years nearby, the Chrysler Building gleamed with a different kind of poetry. Its triangular windows and terraced crown caught the sunset in a dance of gold and shadow, an ode to the Jazz Age's exuberance. I stood at its base, my reflection distorted in the polished steel of its lobby, and felt the echo of Walter Chrysler's Vishnu car magnate who poured his fortune into a skyscraper that would outshine all others, if only for a fleeting moment. It was a fleeting reign, eclipsed by the Empire State within a year, yet its elegance endured, a reminder that beauty could hold its own against time's relentless march. But it was one World Trade Center that gripped my heart most fiercely. I approached it on a gray morning, the sky heavy with clouds that mirrored the city's scars. The tower rose 1,776 feet, a deliberate nod to the year of America's birth, its glass skin reflecting the shifting moods of the heavens. At its base, the 9/11's memorial pools stretched wide, their waters cascading into the earth where the twin towers once stood. Shattering moment, hand felt a grief so vast it seemed to belong to the city itself. Yet above, the tower stood unbroken, its spire piercing the clouds, a declaration that Manhattan would not bow. I met Mia again that day, her warm smile unchanged from the years we'd spent tracing the world's rhythms together. She had come to New York seeking the pulse of its drums, but found instead a different kind of beat, the ceaseless energy of a city that refused to stop moving. This place, she said, her voice soft against the wind. It's like the gem after a storm. The wood is cracked, the skin torn, but the sound still carries. We sat by the memorial, the sound of falling water a quiet hymn, and she told me of her first visit here, years after the towers fell. She had watched the cranes lift steel into the sky, their mechanical arms a slow, deliberate dance of healing. Resilience isn't loud, she said. It's the silence between the beats, the choice to keep going. Kofi's words came back. To me then, his gravelly voice, a memory from a distant village. The drum is a bridge, he had said, between the seen and the unseen. In Manhattan, that bridge was built of concrete and steel, its arches spanning decades of joy and sorrow. I thought of the Flatiron Building, its wedge-shaped grace, a relic of the city's early skyscraper dreams, and the Woolworth Building, its Gothic spires, a cathedral to commerce. Each had weathered storms, literal and figurative, standing firm. As the world shifted around them, steady and unyielding, the story of Manhattan's resilience unfolded most vividly after 9/11's. A chapter written in dust and determination. I spoke to Wanbley, the elder I'd met on the plains, who had come to the city in the aftermath to lend. his hands to the recovery. His weathered face softened as he recalled those days, the air thick with ash and the streets alive with a shared purpose. "We brought our drums," he said, "to honor the fallen, to call the spirits home." He described the powwow held in Battery Park, the great drums' thunder rolling across the harbor as workers dug through the rubble nearby. It was a sound of mourning, yes, but also of strength, a reminder that even in ruin, the city's heartbeat endured. I visited Ground Zero years later, when the scars had begun to heal. The streets buzzed with construction, the skeletal frame of One World Trade Center rising like a phoenix from the ashes. I met a woman named Aisha, a firefighter, who had been there on that September day, her eyes carrying a quiet fire. She spoke of the chaos, the screams, the smoke, the endless hours searching for survivors. "We didn't think about tomorrow," she said. "We just kept going, because that's what New York does." Her story was one of countless others, threads of courage stitched into the fabric of the skyline. I watched her walk away, her silhouette framed against the tower's glass, and saw the resilience Kofi had spoken of, a bridge, not just to the past, but to a future forged in fire. The skyline evolved with each passing year, new towers piercing the clouds as if reaching for something beyond the horizon. Hudson Yards glittered on the west side, its vessel a honeycomb of stairs spiraling into the sky, a symbol of reinvention in a city that never stood still. I climbed its steps one afternoon, the wind carrying the distant roar of traffic, and looked out over the expanse of Manhattan. The old and new stood shoulder to shoulder, the Beaux-Arts grandeur of Grand Central Terminal, the sleek lines of One Penn One, the jagged edges of the skyline blending into a harmony of contrasts. It was a city that wore its history like a mantle, each layer a story of survival. Night fell, and I found myself in Times Square, the electric glow of billboards bathing the streets in perpetual day. The crowds surged around me, a tide of voices and footsteps, and I felt the city's energy coil through me like a current. Here, resilience was not just in the buildings, but in the people, the vendors hawking pretzels, the performers dancing for coins, the dreamers who arrived with nothing but a suitcase and a hope. I thought of Nia, of her words by the memorial, and saw the truth of them in every face I passed. Manhattan was a drum, its rhythm born of countless hands, its song a chorus of unbroken wills. I ended my journey on the Brooklyn Bridge, its stone towers, a gateway between past and present. The skyline stretched before me, a constellation of lights against the velvet dark, and I stood in silence, letting it speak. The Empire State glowed red that night, a heartbeat in the sky, while One World Trade Center's spire cut through the stars. I thought of Kofi, of Wanbli, of Aishov, all the voices that had shaped this story, and felt a swell of something vast and tender. Manhattan's skyline was more than architecture. It was a living testament to resilience, a bridge across time that carried the weight of loss and the promise of tomorrow. As I walked back across the bridge, the city's hum followed me, a rhythm that would never fade. It was the sound of cranes lifting steel, of hands shaping stone, of hearts beating through the silence. It was Nia's quiet strength, Wanbli's sacred drum, Aisha's unyielding fire. It was Manhattan itself, skyline that rose, fell, and rose again, its spires reaching not just for the sky, but for something eternal, something that whispered through the ages, "We are here. We endure." I stand at the edge of the Brooklyn Bridge, the Manhattan skyline glowing against the night, and I can't help but feel the weight of the journey that brought me here. It wasn't just a physical crossing from one place to another. It was a traversal through time, cultures, and the deepest parts of the human spirit. From the blistering sands of ancient Egypt to the serpent-carved temples of Chichen Itza, from the primal rhythms of drums in distant villages to the steel spires of New York, I have walked paths few could imagine, and yet, in every step, I found something universal, something that binds us all, the will to endure, to create, to connect. In Egypt, I woke to a world of merciless heat and unrelenting labor. The Nile was both a lifeline and a threat, its waters teeming with danger, yet sustaining a civilization that built wonders to outlast time. I scrubbed myself with sand, ate bread gritty with the desert itself, and toiled under the sun's hammer. But it was in the festivals, in the songs too hoppy, that I saw how the Egyptians turned their suffering into something sacred. They didn't just survive, they found meaning in the struggle, weaving their faith into the fabric of daily life. The pyramids, those eternal sentinels, were not just tombs, but testaments to a people who dared to dream beyond the horizon of their own mortality. Then, in Chichen Itza, I stepped into a city where the line between the divine and the mortal blurred. The temple of the feathered serpent loomed with its stone serpents, their eyes watching as if they could see into my soul. Its Kotal, my guide, showed me a world where beauty and terror were inseparable, where the ball game was both sport and cosmic ritual, and where blood was the currency of the gods. I painted a mural under the light of Venus, my hands trembling with the weight of the offering. The sacrifices haunted me, but so did the brilliance of a people who aligned their temples with the stars. They lived at the edge of existence, their every act a plea for balance in a universe they could not control but refuse to ignore. From there, I was drawn to the heartbeat of the earth itself, the drums. In a village in West Africa, Nia and Kofi taught me that rhythm was more than sound. It was a language that transcended words. The gems spoke to the spirits, to the ancestors, and to the living, binding them in a circle of shared purpose. I felt it again in the POW drums of the plains, where Wanbli's people honored their past and their future with every beat. And in New Orleans, the drums of jazz and blues echoed the same primal call, proving that no matter where we are, rhythm is the thread that stitches us to one another. It was a lesson in connection, in the power of community to uplift and sustain. Finally, in Manhattan, I saw resilience etched into the skyline. The Empire State Building, born from the depths of the Great Depression, stood as a monument to human defiance. The Chrysler Building shimmered with the elegance of a bygone era, while One World Trade Center rose from the ashes of tragedy. Its spire, a declaration that we can rebuild, that we can endure. I met Aisha, a firefighter who had walked through fire and dust and heard her quiet strength. I listened to Wanbli's drums at Ground Zero, their thunder a prayer for the fallen, and in the faces of the people vendors, performers, dreamers I saw the city's heartbeat, steady and unyielding. This journey was never about the places alone. It was about the people who shaped them, the stories they told, and the lessons they left behind. In Egypt, I learned that survival is not just about enduring the elements, but about finding purpose in the struggle. The Egyptians didn't just build for themselves. They built for eternity, their faith in the afterlife, a beacon that guided their hands. In Chichen Itza, I saw the cost of belief, the sacrifices made to keep the cosmos in balance. Itzcoatl's world was one of fierce devotion, where the line between life and death was thin, and every act was a step in a cosmic dance. The drums taught me that we are never alone, that rhythm is the language of the soul, connecting us across time and space. And in Manhattan, I witnessed the power of resilience, the ability to rise again and again. No matter how deep the wound, the lesson that echoes through it all is this: we are shaped by our struggles, but we are defined by how we respond to them. The Egyptians could have surrendered to the desert's cruelty, but instead they built wonders that still stand. The people of Chichen Itza could have cowered before their gods, but they chose to reach for the stars, aligning their temples with the heavens. The drummers could have let their traditions fade, but they kept the rhythm alive, passing it from hand to hand, generation to generation. And New York, scarred by loss, could have crumbled, but it rose, its skyline a testament to the human spirit's refusal to be broken. In our own lives, we face our own deserts, our own temples of fear, our own moments of silence. But like the people I met, we have a choice. We can let the weight of the world crush us, or we can find our rhythm, our purpose, our way to rise. It's not about avoiding pain. Pain is inevitable. It's about what we do with it. Do we let it define us, or do we use it to fuel our growth? Do we retreat into isolation, or do we reach out, finding strength in community? Do we let our losses bury us, or do we build something new from the ruins? The Egyptians taught me to look beyond the immediate, to build for something greater than myself. Chichen Itza showed me that belief, even when it demands sacrifice, can give life meaning. The drums reminded me that we are never truly alone, that our voices, our rhythms, can resonate across vast distances. And Manhattan proved that resilience is not a single act, but a way of being, a commitment to keep moving forward, no matter the odds. As I stand here, watching the lights of Manhattan flicker like stars, I realize that this journey was never just about the past. It was about the present, about the choices we make every day. We are all travelers, navigating our own landscapes of joy and sorrow, searching for meaning in the chaos. And like the people I met, we have the power to shape our stories, to turn our struggles into strength, our pain into purpose. So, I ask you, dear reader, what is your rhythm? What is the drumbeat that guides your steps? How do you find meaning in your struggles? And how do you rise when the world tries to pull you down? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's learn from each other. Let's build a community of voices, each one adding to the chorus. And if this journey has touched you, if these stories have stirred something within you, please consider subscribing to the channel. Your support fuels the fire that keeps these tales alive, and together we can continue to explore the depths of the human spirit, one story at a time.